Go ahead and grab a seat, and we're going to dive in this morning. I was just made aware with Man Camp, the numbers are in. There's about 50 guys from All of Life up at camp across this weekend, which is just an amazing and beautiful thing to see the men coming together in our church, building relationship and rich relationship and doing life with one another. And the irony for me is that this year was the first year in 4 years, and I'm going to explain what I mean by this, is the year that I wanted to go really bad. And of course, I was prepping for this sermon. I had a chaotic week that I'll describe a little bit later. But the 3 previous years, like, man, I really don't want to go. I don't have it in me. I'm busy. This season I find myself in is chaotic. My wife would encourage me. I'd talk to some of the guys. I'd go and I'd come back and I'd just be like, man, that was so worth it. To engage, to be refreshed, to come alongside men that cared, wanted to lean in alongside me to come alongside them, and them to come alongside me. So it's just amazing to see that the guys were able to rally up there. Sorry that I missed it. Next year, it's on. It's on. So we're going to dive into Psalm 46. And with Psalm 46, I'm just going to lead in with just kind of a big, kind of a global question. The question is really around, what's going on, in your lives right now? Do you have, something big that might be going on right now, something big that's occupying a lot of space in your mind? Maybe it's a number of smaller things that by themselves aren't necessarily a big deal. But when you add them up, they start to really take over some of that mental capacity. Or maybe it might be a bunch of, quote, blessings. We can all say that our children are a blessing. For all the parents in the room, that like air quotes can mean like, yeah, they can be a blessing, but they can also be a lot of work. Running around going, from volleyball practice to music practice, whatever it might be. Summer's chaotic, fall's chaotic, school. They are a blessing, but with blessings, there can become a lot of chaos and a lot of noise. For me, I know that sometimes that noise can get so deafening and so loud, I can't even hear myself think, let alone to be able to hear God in that. And so for anyone that can relate to that, whether in this season right now, as you sit here, tumbling through your own thoughts, trying to organize, there's a lot going on, I got this, I can't forget about that tomorrow. My encouragement is to stop and to clue into Psalm 46, because Psalm 46 is an answer to that tumbling. Now, before we dive into the actual text, a little bit of background. So technically it's part of the text, and this is one of the beauties of it. It says, to the choir master of the sons of Korah. Now, Jeff Dobish a few weeks ago had touched on this in the superscript. Now, Korah, as a man, was good for a while, but not great. He was one of the Levitical worship leaders responsible for worship and music within the temple. And then as we read in Numbers 16, Korah rebelled against Moses. He rebelled. He organized this little rebellion, and it was swallowed up by God. So we ask ourselves, what's up with this, from the sons of Korah? It doesn't sound like a great person. Now, we read later in Numbers 26 that not one of the sons of Korah died. God preserved that family. So that family that was marked by rebellion is now marked. The sons of Korah are marked by worship. And that's just a beautiful thing. It's a sermon in and of itself, but it's also evidence that as we lean into the word, just even those first opening, chapters, the titles carry weight. And there's so much to the scripture. Please just don't overlook even the smallest things. It's a way in which God can speak to us. So to put this in, we'll say, historical context for Psalm 46. Historical context, there are scholars that have placed this primarily in and around 700 BC. So at this point in time, you have King Hezekiah as the king of the Israelites. King Hezekiah was one of the great kings. There were a lot of kings that were not so good for Israel. King Hezekiah was considered one of the greats. But at this point in time, the Assyrians were Israel's enemy. The Assyrians swept through. They were to the north and they swept through. And we had the northern and the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, where Jerusalem was. And the Assyrians swept through, conquering as they went. And then we tee up in Psalm 46, and Jerusalem is surrounded by the Assyrian army. At the helm is Sennacherib, who is the leader of the Assyrians. Now, in Isaiah, we find that it speaks specifically to this. In Isaiah 36, it's going to be up on the screen, so you don't have to thumb around on this, but in Isaiah 36, 13 through 19, the Rabshakeh, which is the emissary, the communicator on behalf of the Assyrians, he stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, which he's speaking Hebrew so they can understand it. Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, don't let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah. For thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out to me. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of you of his own fig tree. Each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Now, if you're a Jew hearing that from an emissary, them's fighting words, because that is a direct attack on God. That's saying you can't trust God. Nevertheless, you can't trust that king, this great king of yours. Now, the people in Jerusalem are looking at this enemy that is virtually surrounding the city. And in the throes of this, Psalm 46 is saying, God is our refuge. God is our strength. He is our help presently in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Why not fear? I mean, the Assyrians had a great army. They had great wealth. They had already trounced through all of Israel and now were surrounding Jerusalem. And it wasn't, because the Jews had a bad army. In fact, they got kind of crushed by the Assyrians. But they've had strength in the past. It wasn't because Hezekiah was some kind of great military strategist. In fact, he was turning and looking to Isaiah saying, man, what do we do in this situation? They had no fear because God was there. Now, this historical account culminates in 2 Kings 19:35. And this is the power of God in going to him in prayer. He sent an angel out and decimated the Assyrian army in one night. 185,000 gone. Problem solved. That army, which caused great consternation and fear, trouncing through all of Israel, gone. Because God is in control. He is sovereign. He is king. And the key point here is the people of God, they weren't safe because their circumstances were safe. They were safe because God was their refuge. That is critical. Their surroundings dictated, gosh, that doesn't sound safe at all. But God was there. And that's why they were safe. Now, as we break down the psalm itself, we're going to break it down into 3 key points. And the first is when the world shakes, God does not. When the world shakes, God does not. Let's look at verses 1 through 3. And if you have your Bible, I encourage you to grab it out. If you get your Bible app on your phone, please pull it open. If you don't have a Bible or you don't have one with you or even in possession, there's black Bibles in the seatbacks in front of you. We're going to be on page 444 is where Psalm 46 is in that black Bible. And if you don't have a Bible, take notes in that and take it home with you. It's our gift to you. We really want to make sure everyone has access to God's word. But in Psalm 46, verses 1 through 3, it says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. Selah. Here this is powerful language. These are big images that it puts into our mind. And right out of the gates, we see that God is our refuge, our strength, and a very present help in trouble. So we see these 3 key descriptions of God right out of the gates. So let's unpack those 3. God is our refuge. Now the word in Hebrew for refuge is machaseh. And I'm not proficient in Hebrew, but it's a very guttural language. It's fun to say, machaseh. means refuge. And other translations of this word is this shelter. It's a place of protection. This isn't a word that's used of, God, just give me a positive attitude. Help me kind of overcome this in my mind, to go do this or that. No, it's when the storm comes, I run to him. He is my security. He is my refuge, my protection in the throes of this storm. Now, for the security of us as believers, our security doesn't rest in us. It rests outside of us. Now, that truth is easy to say, yeah, sure. I can be flippant and agree to that too. But the reality is, I trend back to the traps that can ensnare a lot of us, which is I find my security in a great many other things, and not first in God or in seeking him as my refuge. This can come in the form of me finding my security in my wisdom, my performance or my perfection, my ability to anticipate problems or to control my circumstances. And as many of the guys in the room, I think you can relate, my ability to fix things. Not just a car, but just to fix situations. And if you don't agree with that and you're married, your spouse is probably whacking you in the arm saying, that's you. These are areas in which I find my security, and I wonder if anyone can relate to that as well. Not in God first, but in my own or our own powers. But the truth is that our security, our refuge is found in God. He is the one that's secure. He is the one that is trustworthy. He's loving. He is king. Not me, not you. He is king. Now, second, we see that God is our strength. And here what the psalmist does not say is, God, give us enough strength so that we can handle everything before us. God, just give me what I need to get forward. No. He says, God is our strength. This is very different because for our lives, it's ultimately not that God helps me be strong enough. That's incorrect. The reality is God is strong regardless of whether I am or not. God is strong and remains and always will be strong. And I know for me, what this can look like at times, and maybe you can relate to this, is a prayer that sounds something like this: Lord, please give me the strength. Sometimes it's a period and a hard stop. Other times it's, Lord, give me the strength in this situation to love my wife, to be a good dad, to work hard. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that prayer whatsoever. I'm going to God with something in which I have a need, and I'm seeking him in order to try to come alongside to give me something that I might need in that moment. But try this one on for size and see how it sounds differently. Lord, I trust that you're in control, not me. Give me the strength to believe and trust that. Lord, use me just as a conduit for your Spirit, that you may lead and I may react and submit and follow and take action where you would call me. It's a very different prayer and both very applicable to the same settings. But instead of it being about me and what I'm asking God to provide me and then for me to go do, it's about him being in control. It's about him being sovereign and me saying, let me submit to that and not give me what I need to go do. Very different. So this is less about us getting what we want in order to exert control. It's about us releasing control to him. Now, third, we see that God is a very present help. Here, the Hebrew language that is used is a help that's found exceedingly. It's not like help that's just enough. It is help in the time of trouble that is exceedingly available to us. And it isn't merely this theoretical concept. It's the idea that he is present in trouble. He is present in Jerusalem at the time when they're surrounded by the Assyrians. He's present with us right now as we might have a tumbling mind trying to just quiet some of that noise to invite him in. He's present when people are sick and ailing. He's present in our troubles right now. And this is important because I know I can fall into this trap at times too, which is a when-then or an if-then mindset, performance-based. well, if God really loved me, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Or if I did this differently here, then that wouldn't have taken place. And I make it more of a works-based and more of a performance-based mindset, when the reality is the Psalm 46 says the exact opposite. Psalm 46 informs us that trouble is precisely where God's presence is most precious. Jesus even has said that we will endure trials. Look at Paul. Look at the disciples, after Jesus resurrected, they went to their own crosses. They died on his behalf. It was not going to be easy, but God is present in our trouble. And that's the beauty of recognizing that he is there with you, loving, supporting. And after we get these three key pieces of God and these descriptors, we see this big word called therefore. Now, there was a pastor at a church that Sharon and I used to attend where he would always come to this hard stop, and you get very excited about the word therefore. And he's like, okay, everybody stop. Therefore. Now, we all have to ask ourselves, what's the therefore? Therefore. And then there would be this big seminal moment where we unpack and we discover like, oh, wow, okay, that's actually really cool. Well, for me, it's stuck because then we see this big therefore right on the heels of these three beautiful descriptions of who God is. And so we have to pause and we have to ask, okay, therefore, so what about these three premises? These three premises. God is our refuge. God is our strength. He is a present help in the time of trouble. If those three things are in fact true and we believe them to be, therefore, what do we have to fear? If you believe that, if you submit to that, you have nothing to fear. And then although all these crazy things happen around me, the chaos ensues, as we see in the rest of that verse, of mountains trembling and the roar and the frothing of the waters, don't care. I'm not afraid because I trust in my truths. So this is a really critical piece to line up. And so maybe for us, that chaos, the chaos that's around us, maybe you can relate to this. If you're sitting in a quiet space, this is me this morning at 5 a.m. So last night, my daughter wasn't feeling well, was up late, trying to take care of her. My wife wasn't feeling well either, and stayed up as late as she could. And then there I am, it's like midnight, and I'm still, wrestling with sermon notes. And there's other contributors to that I'll share about in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure I got up early, not only so I could suck down like 5 cups of coffee and be awake enough for the 8 o'clock crowd and actually bring the energy, but I knew that I needed to just like lean in and have some time with God. And there I am, 5 a.m, no one's awake. The dog is passed out on the carpet too, which is amazing. It's quiet. Take that first sip of coffee, and then all of a sudden that quiet space got louder. And it got louder and louder and louder. And the quieter it got, the louder it got up here. I was running 400 miles an hour in my head. And it just kept escalating. And I had to resist the temptation to just get my phone out and just start death scrolling on YouTube Shorts. That's my go-to. It's like, well, how can I numb out on this? Because I just can't quiet the noise. I'm just going to distract myself. Maybe for you it's Instagram Reels or, whatever slam to face, whatever social media that's out there right now. Or it could be the news. It could be any one thing that you use to take your attention off of God, and it becomes a major distraction. That noise can take our eyes off of him and back into the world and off of him. It's a very easy trap. And so some of these things that contribute to this, we had mentioned big things, blessings, small things. But one of my favorites is when I'm chatting with people at church. I've said this probably to some of you. And I know some of you have said it to me, like, hey, how's it going? Like, wow, well, this or that's going on. Like, wow, that's actually seems like pretty, an intense issue or what have you. And the answer is, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's not a big deal. It's fine. It's going to be okay. It's not a big deal. Well, maybe so. Maybe those not a big deals, they aren't really that big of a deal. But when you string enough it's not a big deals together, it becomes a very big deal. And it contributes to that spinning, that noise, that chaos. And then that distraction, it's easy for us to get lost back into those ways that we find our security and our, trying to control, trying to exert our vice grip on life or trying to fix. If you find yourself operating here, if you're just trying to solve life's problems under your own ability, maybe it's purposefully, maybe it's not, but if you find yourself tumbling My question to you right now is, where is God in that? In those moments when that mind's going 100 miles an hour, where is God in that? Is he in that? Maybe you're forcefully, when then mindset, pushing him away. Say, when I get this figured out, when I get through this crazy season, then I'll be able to go before him and have that quiet time, that space, that peace that I can get through him. That's an easy trap as well. I say that to myself all the time. It's a busy season. How many people have said that recently? All the time. It's a busy season. That becomes an excuse. It becomes a crutch to say, well, it's a busy season right now, but like when this calms down, then, I'll be able to do this or that. I'll be able to make space for God. I mean, that is completely backwards. It's an easy trap for us to get sucked into. So this is an opportunity. If you can identify with any of that, is to stop and to run to him. There's no time like right now. It's not when I'm ready. It's now. He is waiting, ready to receive you and to make those big things smaller to allow you to do this in life and less walking through with that vice grip of control. So our second big point here as we lean into verses 4 through 7 is God's presence is greater than our chaos. God's presence is greater than our chaos. So let's look at verses 4 through 7. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage. The kingdoms totter. He utters his voice. The earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Now here we have this pretty dramatic shift in the language that's used. In verses 2 and 3, we hear, mountains trembling and roaring, foaming seas. And then in verse 4, bam, it says, there's a river whose streams make glad the city of God. And this is referencing city of God, Jerusalem or Zion. Then in verse 5, God is within her. She, Jerusalem or Zion, shall not be moved. This is key because the security of Jerusalem wasn't in the walls. It was in God's presence. Because outside of that city, what did we see? We saw nations raging, kingdoms falling, mountains shaking, waters roaring, and armies threatening. But inside the city, God was there. Therefore, they did not have fear. He was with them. And that's why verse 7 becomes this beautiful refrain that's repeated down in verse 11, where the Lord of hosts is, present tense, with us. The God of Jacob is, present tense, our fortress. This isn't past tense, not like back in that time when they were surrounded back in 700 BC, God was with them. No, this is present tense, speaking to them and us right now. God is with us. The Lord of hosts is with you as you sit in your chair right now. The language that's used in Hebrew is Yahweh Sabaoth. And this translates to the Lord of hosts or God of armies. Now, as a red-blooded male, I hear God of armies, and I'm like, ooh, that's powerful. For too long, the Lord of hosts, I just didn't associate it with that level of strength. The Lord of hosts, the God of armies. That is powerful, and he is with us. Now, let's remember the historical setting. Sennacherib is leading the Assyrians, completely surrounding Jerusalem. And then God, here he is, commanding all of heaven's armies. Sennacherib might have chariots, warriors, wealth. He's got the upper hand in this battle, he thinks, and yet God controls heavenly armies. One night, bam, goodbye Assyria. Threat taken care of. In verse 6, we see that he lifts his voice and the earth melts. That's some imagery for you. That God is not just in control of armies and of the wars that we face on a human level. He is in control of all creation. And that is awing. It's humbling. And next we see that God is the God of Jacob is our fortress. This is interesting because why not the God of Abraham, the God of Moses? It says the God of Jacob. For those of you that might be familiar with Old Testament or familiar with your Bibles, Jacob wasn't exactly the poster child of what it meant to be like a perfect Jew. I mean, Abraham went to the altar with his son, prepared to make a sacrifice in response to God. And then God provided a ram, saying, my goodness, your faithfulness, you're awesome, Abraham. Or Jacob, his name translates to the deceiver. Jacob was marked by deception. He was a fearful man. He was very manipulative and scheming, to the point where he wore the cloak over him to get the birthright of his brother. And yet God chose Jacob. God preserved Jacob. He disciplined Jacob. And God transformed him, so much so that God gave him a new name, Israel. And Jacob's 13 children, those are the 13 tribes of Israel. God blessed that broken man. So the God who is faithful to Abraham, Isaac, Moses, these like titans of the Old Testament, he is also faithful to Jacob. And this is a beautiful picture of just that shows God's covenantal faith over time. He was, and he is, and he will continue to be faithful to all of us who bear his name. It's not a matter of how we perform. We don't have to be Abraham or Moses. You bet your bottom that we want to do our best and put our best effort forward faithfully. But he uses broken people like Jacob, like Korah, to bless his name. And so God's faithfulness is abounding for his people. And it's not about our performance or our perfection. Now, the third point, when we look at verses 8 through 10, is to stop fighting for control. Stop fighting for control. In verse 8, we see, come behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow. He shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Again, powerful language and imagery. And in this set of verses is what many of us would maybe be familiar with, even those that aren't really true, like, say, Bible scholars, or even maybe not even believers here with us today. But if you go into someone's house, this could be one of those verses that you see up on the wall. Be still and know that I am God. I know Sharon and I had that on our wall in the basement, a little reading room. It said, be still on one side and know on the other. Now, for me, for over a decade, I associated this verse with something that God revealed to me it is not necessarily intended to be. That be still was some kind of relaxed, chill out kind of state. Be still and know that I am God. If you heard that on its own, cherry picked out of the Bible, you might think, yeah, that's pretty comforting and relaxing. But the reality is it's not just about our emotional comfort. The two words that are used here were leaned into by R.C. Sproul. And if you want to read some more about this, there's some great writings on the Ligonier Ministries in which you can run through. There's 5 to 10 minute reads on this, breaking it all down. It's been supported by a great many Bible scholars where he identifies that the word that's actually used in the Hebrew is harpu instead of rapah. Now, these words are related to one another, and we think harpu and rapah, how's that related? I mean, we think more like the Latin, like if it sounds alike, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, they're kind of related. But in the Hebrew, it's more of a lexical dialect where these are related, but they can be interchanged at times, but it's how they're emphasized. Now, rapah means to sink down, to relax, to let go. These are calming and denote that more relaxed space. Take the blood pressure down. Light a candle. Put your feet up. Listen to the relaxing tone of my voice and the waves in the background to quiet your mind. It's almost like this let go and let God. You want a way to get under Jared's skin because he's not here today. This is great, and he's going to kill me for saying this probably. But next time you see him, walk up to him from behind and just whisper in his ear, "Let go and let God." And I've told this to all 3 services, and I'm hoping that more than 50 people do it to him. And he's like, "What happened on Sunday?" And Dana, you're not allowed to do this while I'm not here ever again. But that mindset, there's nothing wrong with being quiet in the presence of God. Don't get me wrong here. I don't want to say that there's something wrong with just having those peaceful moments resting in God's presence. That is a good thing. But just caution the misapplication of this verse in order to justify that response, because the word harpu is the exact inflected word, and it means cease striving, let go, drop your hands. The idea is action-oriented. This is cease striving, relinquish your grip, release control. And so this context, it matters a lot. As we read through this before, just in verse 9, one verse before, he makes wars cease. He breaks the bow, shatters the spear, burns chariots, and then be still. I don't know about you, but after reading those, it's not the kind of thing I just want to kick back with my feet up and light a candle to. That's God saying very powerful things and then speaking to creation, be still. Stop. Enough. Recognize who is God. Who is in control here? Because it sure as heck ain't any one of us. It is him. And God's not just talking about one person or speaking to one particular audience. He's just saying this generally. Assyrians alike, stop. Next day, gone. He's in control of all creation. Now, earlier, when we were addressing some of that noise in our lives, whether that noise be from, say the chaos, too many it's not a big deals, the blessings, I asked the question that, where is God in that for you, in that space? Now, sometimes I, and maybe some of us also, think the problem might be, there's just too much happening. This is like the trap of the busy season. I just got too much going on. I can't really make that space right now. Like, it's a little chaotic. It is what it is. But the deeper question that sometimes I at least need to ask myself, and I would encourage you to ask in those seasons you might find yourself, is, are you believing that your responsibility is to control what's happening? Are you attempting to control the outcomes before you? Because this is a little different. So for me, over the last 10 years or so, I've been doing this a lot and this a lot. And I use this imagery a lot. Sharon and I, when I say this, she knows exactly. It's not me going, you don't know what you do. She just knows that's me trying to white knuckle control something. And when I do this, it's holding it loosely. And that sounds great. It might sound foo-foo to some of you, but the reality is, for me, what I've learned is that is an act of submission. It is a step of faith. And it has been a lot of work for me over the years to be able to do this, white-knuckling the control of situations, to be able to do this, to release those and to hold those outcomes loosely and trust God with them. Not me with them, but him with them. Now, with this, it's interesting because in order to do this, I needed to quiet my roll, slow my roll. Because when it's too busy and my mind's going 100 miles an hour, the question, where is God in that? I'm not making room to allow him in. So that was almost like the step one. I had to create that space to just really slow down and focus on him, which made it easier to then do this because I knew what was true, could believe that. He is king, he is God, not me. This is not, a biblical stillness that we're after that's just, entrenched in passivity. This is submission. Submission to the king. And it's not a matter of I don't care what happens. It's a matter of I know and I trust the sovereign one who is in control of what does. So for us on a pragmatic level, what could this look like in our daily walk? To quiet that noise, to focus on God's word, to focus on Him. Now, some of you might be familiar with a practice called the centering prayer. And the centering prayer was practiced by the desert fathers and desert mothers in the early church, and then it was reinvigorated back in the 70s. We're not going to be talking about that specifically, but there's some interesting application of that happened over time as it was resurrected, more towards emptying our mind. And that's not what we're after. It's not like some kind of like a Buddhist, like Eastern, Far East tradition of just like empty your mind. It's something of quieting the noise so you can focus on God. And so in doing that, one of the first steps we can take is to stop. Take that breath, stop doing what we're doing, stop worrying about tomorrow's problems, stop getting this out and death struggling in order to numb on the current condition. And after we stop, the effort is to remember, and remember what? Remember who God is. What's true about God? We know in Psalm 46 that God is our refuge, our strength, and our peace and protector in a time of trial and trouble. It's not necessarily what am I afraid of tomorrow. That's placing my troubles on tomorrow's issue. The issue is what has God revealed to me today? And today we know that He is sovereign. He is good. He is king. He's not surprised. He is with you right now in this space. You need to make time to invite Him in to receive the full glory of Him. And as we do, then we pray. We ask God to hold those outcomes loosely. And we ask Him the direction in which we need to be headed, to seek His direction, not our own. And one of the hardest steps is then to obey what that is, to respond in faith, to take action where God is calling you. And what this doesn't mean is to be a hard stop on all of your responsibilities. Because reality is, if you're a student, do your classwork and your coursework well. If you're a husband, love your wife well. If you have a job, perform it faithfully. If you have a family, raise and steward them well. If you have a sin that you need to confess it. These are areas in which God calls us, no matter the circumstances, to take action. But in the throes of doing that, I would encourage you, don't confuse your faithful fulfillment of your responsibilities with trying to control the outcomes. So I'll say that again. Let's not confuse the direction that God has called us in to say be a great spouse, to love our husbands or wives, to be a parent to our children, to work hard. Let's not confuse our faithful fulfillment of those responsibilities in the direction God calls us with trying to exert control over the outcomes, because that is God's responsibility, not ours. So for me, in my life, it's pretty chaotic. I mean, we have a small business. It's in agriculture. And if anybody knows what's going on in the ag market, it is a disaster out there. It's terrible. The ag market's completely in the tank. I mean, the stock market might be doing well, but the ag market, oh my gosh, it is a nightmare out there. And so we had upwards of 10 people at one point, not that long ago. We're down to 2 people. And those 2 people are Sharon and me. And right now we're just trying to keep this company alive. So some people here are like, oh man, you're an entrepreneur? Like, that's amazing. You got your own business? Like, you must be rich. It's like, that's hilarious. Check with me in 20 years and see if anything's changed. Sure, there might be some flexibilities. There might be the blessing around it, but there's a lot of challenges, and it's really difficult. And so in the throes of that, right now, trying to seek some more opportunities for some stability. Took a job with North Idaho College. I taught there before, and I was invited to come back. And so last week, as I'm prepping for this, I had to prepare for classes that start tomorrow and launch for 5 courses. So it was just it's chaotic, major blessing, but that was a lot of noise. That was a lot of chaos. Some late nights weaved in and all of that. Coming alongside certain friends in difficult times, trying to love, those that need loving. And the reality is, it was just a few nights ago that Sharon and I had a conversation, and she was just breaking down, just weeping on the couch, saying, man, I know we've got so much happening. It's up, it's down, it's pros and cons. We're a team, but I don't feel like I'm a priority right now. And for me, that was a very humbling place to have to respond. Because here I am thinking, man, I'm doing all of this for you. I'm doing all this for our family. I'm working so hard. How can you say that? But the reality being, she was not feeling seen, known, heard. And here I am telling myself, I'm doing all of this for everyone else. Who am I really doing that for? And also, how much control am I trying to exert? Am I truly holding that like this? Because if I am, I'm loving her well. If I am, I'm a great father to my kids. If I am, that stuff doesn't get under my skin and create chaos for me. So when those responsibilities start to close our fist, for me, I know what it leads to is that my responsibilities, they throw my priorities out of order. And I'll say that again. My responsibilities, they throw my priorities out of order at times. So I think of our priorities in that pyramid, where our priorities at the top needs to be God. God is our top priority. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Seek first the kingdom of God. These are commands. They are unequivocal. Jesus reaffirms them as the most important. That needs to be at the top of our pyramid, followed by, if you're married, it's your spouse. Hate to break it to you, to love people that love to bend over backwards for your kids. It is not God, kids, spouse. God's spouse, kids. Not God's God, spouse, kids. Then work, then the rest. When we take that and we flip it over and we try to balance that, good luck. That'll tip over in just a light breeze. It doesn't take much to push that out of whack. I'm living proof of that. I just shared that with you, with how my wife felt when I had my priorities rearranged in the wrong way. And it was a humbling moment, but it was an act of submission to say, you're right. And right then and there, it was like the light bulb went off. And Sharon will probably agree from you, that conversation turned on a dime. One of defensiveness and walls to all of a sudden like, man, God needs to be first. I'm wrong. And if God's not first, you're not second, because I'm flipped upside down. So the truth is, one, be cautious about where your priorities are at. And two is that we don't need to know how every one of these pieces all fits together. But the truth is, we need to know the one who does. Keep him at the top of our pyramid. And so with Psalm 46, we see this same God who is our refuge, our strength. This is the same God revealed in Jesus Christ. And Jesus is our ultimate refuge from any storm. Now, we see this in Mark 4, beautiful analogy in which Jesus is in the boat with the disciples and they're crossing across the lake. And for those of you that are familiar with this story, they're traveling across. Jesus is tired. He lays down to rest. And then all of a sudden, a storm brews and it starts churning up the waters. And then before you know it, it's a big storm. And the disciples are scared. There's water coming over the edge of the boat. And they are freaking out. And we're talking about experienced fishermen that have done this many times. And they're nervous. That means it's a bad set of circumstances. Who was in the boat with them when that was happening? Jesus was. And what was he doing? He was asleep. The God of all creation was in the throes of what they thought was something really bad, and he's sleeping. He's good because he knows he's in control. The disciples, on the other hand, they're freaking out and they're waking him saying, Jesus, wake up. Don't you care? We're going to sink. What do we do? And Jesus wakes, and what does he do? He just rebukes the storm. And everything goes to calm. It's just incredible because who was in the boat before the storm? Jesus. Jesus was in the boat. Who was in the boat during the storm? Jesus. Who's in the boat with you right now as you're going 400 miles an hour in this storm? Jesus. And who was in the boat after the storm, after the waves calmed? Jesus. The disciples, in response to this, have this response that I pray it's a response for each and every one of us in which they were just in sheer awe. And they said, who is this man? That even the wind and the waves, they listened to him. They were terrified. And this isn't like the terrified, I'm scared, I want to run away. It's just this like awe-inspiring response. And it's just this incredible piece where, Jesus rebukes the wind and the storm. And in Psalm 46:6, it says he lifts his voice and the earth melts. Jesus lifts his voice, storm calms. He is in control of all creation. He is the one that came to fulfill the prophecies. He is the one who died for your and my sins. He is the one in which we can trust. He is the one in which we can seek refuge. He is strong. He is our strength. And Jesus is present in our troubles right now. So I would encourage you, if you're still trying to white knuckle through this false hope of control, it's time to harpoo. It's time to throw your hands down. It's time to let go of the outcomes of those circumstances. Not let go and let God. It's time to release and relinquish that control and to answer in obedience and where God would call you now. If you're a believer, I would encourage you to remember those 4 key points: to stop, make time, remember who God is and the truths in who he is, to pray that you can trust him, to relinquish control to him, and to give you clear direction, and with that to obey and follow in the direction in which you're called. And for those that may not have put their trust in Jesus, Jared just last week prayed about the prodigal son when he was preaching on some of the parables. And in this case, you have the father looking on the horizon, and as soon as the son, who's shameful, who squandered everything, comes back, crests over the horizon, the father runs to him. This man that was returning full of shame and full of doubt and full of fear is just embraced by his father warmly. And he's put a coat on him. He puts a signet or a ring on his finger, indicating he's part of the family, shoes on his feet, welcomed into the family of God. That is Jesus for you right now. And I pray that you would not do this with your lives and to do this. Answer his call, please. Now, the end of this story is it's not that my life gets quiet. I've shared some of the noise in my life, and it's not meant to be a competition. I mean, we have a lot going on. Some have it a whole lot worse. Others have it a little easier. But there's still noise in every one of your lives. For me, there's things I'd love for him to explain. There's things I'd love for him to change. There's things that I wish I could have control of, because just if I had control, I'd solve it faster. Well, no, that's not true. Psalm 46 isn't teaching me that the answer isn't necessarily that God makes my life easier. The answer is for me to be quiet enough to realign my priorities with God firmly on top, and then to remember who he is and to take refuge in him, knowing that he is in control, not me.